Welcome, everybody, to the Huddle, KGUD9 streaming sports talk show every Tuesday. A little early today. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Paris. Pat, good afternoon. How are you today?
Good. Yeah, a little early today, but let's get going. A lot to talk about. Wow.
Yeah, we got a little story conflict. We're hoping to have a guest, so some good reasons why we're early. But Pat, of course, we're into March Madness here. We've got the tournaments going underway here with the Pac-12 tournament. And Arizona is going to play a quarterfinal game on Thursday. They're going to play the winner of Utah and Stanford. I believe we have that bracket that we can show up for everybody. There we go in the Pac-12 tournament. UCLA gets a number one seed, well-earned 10-game winning streak going into the Pac-12 tournament. And Arizona and the Bruins likely on a collision course in the finals, but certainly a few games they got to get under the belt before then.
Yeah, and you kind of like this. They had just one bad game against Utah before, but you expect them to win that game. They seem to match up very well, Jason, against USC. And then you're right. It's a showdown for UCLA, and it'll be the rubber game of the match between the schools, each winning on their home court against one another. So third time maybe would be the charm. We'll see. We'll see how that would affect the bracketing. I'm not sure how much it really would at this point. As you saw yesterday, it didn't change the national rankings or the bracketology with the loss for Arizona, and you wouldn't expect it to. Arizona, according to Joe Lenardi, is sitting right now at a 2 seed in the Midwest, so they would end up in Kansas City after the first two games, and then UCLA, he's got them as the number 1 seed in the West. That would, of course, keep them out West.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this tournament, Pat. I'm not sure there's anything Arizona can do to move ahead of UCLA and get in that West, whether it's a 1 or a 2 seed, because if they win out and beat UCLA in the finals, I still think even though they've beaten the Bruins 2 out of 3 times, with the gap that they would have to close this late in the season, I don't think it would be able to close. I think the only thing Arizona really could do is hurt themselves. If they lose early, they might drop down to a 3 seed. You never know. That may not be the end of the world. But I think even a first round exit or a quarterfinal exit in UCLA's case, I don't think, combined with an Arizona win, meaning the best case scenario, I still don't think they would leap over UCLA in that case.
Yeah, and that's one of those situations, Jason, where you build your resume throughout the season, and because you've gotten to this point, wins and losses barely make even a negligible difference at this point. You've got Arizona, who's solidly on the 2 line. You've got UCLA, who now becomes a 1 seed. I don't see it changing. You're right. Barring a collapse in the first round by either, or with their first game of these teams, and even then, I'm pretty sure they're pretty well set.
All right, Pat, we've got a special guest today, and he is Dan Caesar from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and he is going to talk all things sports media, and there's a lot to talk about. So, Dan, I believe his camera's turning on right now. And good afternoon. How are you?
He was worried. He was worried he wouldn't have
9 studios in Tucson.
He was worried he wouldn't have enough signal to get the picture from where he was doing a story. Dan Caesar, of course, media critic, and really we have you on, Dan, because there's a lot to discuss, isn't there, about the state of regional sports TV, the Pac-12 network, these contracts for the Big 12, the UCLA, USC going to the Big 10. A lot going on as far as sports media goes right now in this country.
Boy, it seems like it never stops right now. There's something going on just almost every day. There's a new development. And obviously the biggest one is probably the demise of the regional sports networks, which have been around, for a long time now. And they're certainly on the brink right now.
All right. So here in Arizona, Dan, we certainly have the Arizona Diamondbacks, and fans watch their games on Bally Sports Arizona. What are you hearing about what the latest situation is, and what should we tell Diamondback fans? What should a Diamondback fan here know about how they're going to be able to watch their games the rest of the season?
I guess the best answer is stay tuned, because it's still up in the air. Major League Baseball is really ramping up to take over the local broadcast if Bally's collapses, which it looks like it will be. Right now, they're in a period of trying to figure out what's going on. They missed a big interest payment last month that was due, and it was $140 million. And so they're right now in a period where things are trying to be figured out as what's going to happen. It looks like they're headed for bankruptcy. So Major League Baseball has set up a special office to try to deal with this, with all the local broadcasts that will be affected. And they've hired several executives who've worked in the regional sports network business to try to get this going. So Rob Manfred, the commissioner, has already said that there will be no problem with people getting the games either on a regional sports network or streaming or however they've been accessing it if this thing does collapse, which it looks like it's headed to. It looks like it's headed towards bankruptcy.
And this all comes, Dan, right as Major League Baseball is about to begin its regular season in a few weeks. You've got, of course, the NBA and NHL, also properties for Bally Sports Arizona, and for you in St. Louis, Bally Sports Midwest. They're getting now for the NBA, getting close to the playoffs. So are the NHL, and in Arizona, of course, we care so much about the Phoenix Suns because they made the big trade and they look like the team to beat in the West. It's just a horrible time for all this to come to a head.
It sure is. And one saving grace, though, with the NHL and the NBA is the seasons are almost over. And once you get into the playoffs, I know there's local TV in the first round, but there's also national television of the first round outside of the local market. So if this would collapse, they could just pick up the national broadcast for the first round of the playoffs. And then obviously after that, it's national all the way.
Real quick, Dan, how did we get here? Did they just overpay when these is that where it happened?
Well, they bought Sinclair, which owns the regional sports networks and has it under the umbrella of Bally. I'm sorry, under the umbrella of Diamond, and then Diamond further puts it under Bally's branding. So it's really owned by Sinclair under the Diamond brand. And they bought it in 2010. I'm sorry, they bought it in 2019. And I believe it was $10.6 billion they paid for the regional sports networks, 19 of them across the country. And the latest estimate is they were worth about $3 billion now. So they've lost over $7 billion, billion, not million, since 2019. And obviously some of that had to do with the pandemic, but the cord cutting was already underway before they bought it. They should have realized that things were actually going the opposite direction because people were already going to streaming and cable was on the decline already. So it was something that they bought when it was too high, and now they're stuck.
Jason Barr, Pat Paris here with Dan Caesar, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Dan, Pat just asked how we got here. My question to you is, where do you see this going? Like, what's the long-term solution? Yeah, let's say Bally's goes under, God forbid, and games are being aired on Major League Baseball regionally or however they do it. That's not the long-term scenario, or is it?
Well, that's the $1 million question right now, or maybe $1 billion question is a better way to put it. But it looks like the league will take it over for the time being, and then buy themselves some time to sort out what they're going to do. One thing that'll really probably develop though out of this is that some of these local broadcast restrictions, blackout restrictions, will be ending. They're kind of antiquated, and I know Major League Baseball has been trying to get this taken care of for a while. So I know in Las Vegas, if you're up there, you get blackouts of about 5 teams. You got both LA teams, the Diamondbacks in San Diego, and I think both San Francisco and Oakland are also blacked out in Las Vegas. So you can't watch any of those teams on streaming or on a regional, one of these MLB.TV packages. So they're trying to get rid of that where you can buy any game wherever you want. So that would be one big step forward.
We of course are also trying to follow, and I know this isn't your area of expertise, but you went through it when Missouri left the Big 12 and ended up going to the SEC. You're seeing this exodus of UCLA and USC, and now at the exact same time, the Pac-12 is trying to somehow broker a deal with ESPN. Again, the timing seems to be awful, and they really seem to be stuck again. The Pac-12 is not the strongest of all the broadcast networks, and now they're trying to find a way to get something done.
Yeah, it's a real mess. You lose your 2 big bell cows there with the UCLA and USC, and the whole restructuring. You're bringing in programs that are not nearly as prominent in smaller markets. So it's definitely, they're way behind the curve, and it's another situation where you're just probably going to kind of end up with a worse situation you had before.
Do you think this is the right move for UCLA? USC too, but more specifically, I think UCLA, a little bit of a different situation. USC is a brand like Notre Dame. Do you have an opinion on how you think this is going to play out?
It's all money. It's all money. They're going to make more money in the long run, like these teams like Texas and Oklahoma moving to the SEC. It's all about money. So the old conference alignments and the regional rivalries, they're all dead. They're all a thing of the past. So you got teams going all over the country to play games. And the close travel, that's a thing of the past too. In a lot of instances, it's the whole bottom line. So that's the main thing that's in focus now.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because we saw in your neck of the woods, Dan. I keep bringing up Missouri, but Mizzou is found itself kind of muddling along at times in its
Yep.
SEC conference, and you lose some of that regional, the good old Iowa State, Missouri, or Missouri, Kansas, and
Right.
it's not the same, and yet the almighty dollar is winning out in Columbia.
Yep. Well, it's the same way out there. You're going to lose the Arizona USC and Arizona State against the California teams rivalry, against USC and UCLA. And you're going to have UCLA traveling all the way across the country to play softball or the so-called minor sports, the Olympic sports. Does that make a lot of sense? No, but the football and basketball pay the freight for that. So they're going to come out way ahead financially in the long run, even though they're going to have a lot more travel costs incurred.
I don't know. I see a situation where UCLA is going to be playing home games with the crowd cheering against them, because everybody who went to Iowa, who lives anywhere within any type of radius.
Sounds like the NFL these days, right?
That's what I mean.
Sounds like.
And good luck to UCLA basketball or USC basketball going to Michigan and Michigan State for a weekend.
Yeah.
And the travel and everything like this. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it's going to be a tough deal for UCLA.
I really do. I do too. And you're going to play football games in November in cold climates up in the Northeast. Maybe not this year, but eventually. So it's going to be a whole different feel for everybody.
9 a.m. football games at Rutgers. Hey, I feel this has kind of been a little bit of a downer, Dan. Anything good that you know of that we can talk about? Or you got some good news for us here?
Well, the baseball season's about to start. There's always optimism in the spring, right?
That's true. Well, maybe not here like there is in St. Louis.
Well, everybody's optimistic.
Paul
The Pirates are even optimistic. The Pirates are always optimistic, even at this time of year.
Well, that's true. That's true. That is the definition of hope springs eternal when you're
exactly.
A fan.
Yep.
How's Paul Goldschmidt look?
He's looked really good. He's ready to go to the World Baseball Classic now, so it's going to be an interesting time.
Yeah, that's a little diversion, I guess, from all this regional TV stuff. Is this World Baseball Classic? It
starts tonight.
Yeah, and what they say, the U.S. and Dominican Republic have probably the two best lineups.
Yeah, it should be interesting, and you get you'll get other teams too, and the Japan team will probably be good with Otani, and they've got a lot of interest over there, so it'll be a good diversion, like you said.
All right, Dan Caesar, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Thank you so much for taking time with me, Jason Barr and Pat Paris here on the Huddle on this Tuesday. We're appreciative that you made time for us today.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Dan, thanks for the time. We appreciate it.
All right,
Great
good talking.
Bye. All right, take care.
And Pat, to piggyback off of that, so for the viewers and the listeners here on the Huddle who may not know, Pat Paris and I work for KGUN 9, the ABC station in Tucson. Only in the very major markets, the biggest cities in this country, are these television stations what's called O&Os, meaning owned and operated. So, yes, Channel 7 in New York City is an O&O. They're owned and operated by ABC. But our station, KGUN 9, the ABC station in Tucson, and the ABC station in Phoenix, KNXV, we're both owned by a company called EW Scripps. And EW Scripps has a portfolio of 61, I believe, television stations. I'm off by a couple, and some national brands, Court TV, and one of them is Ion.
Ion, yeah.
And if you're not familiar with Ion is the 5th largest broadcaster in the country. Is that right, Pat?
That's right.
I believe they're 5th. Right. Okay. And so recently, EW Scripps set up a subdivision of the company, or a section of the company, if you will, called Scripps Sports. And what they're looking to do, what our company's looking to do is, hey, if there's an opportunity here, let's get games, whether it be Diamondbacks or college or wherever, back on over-the-air television. And so the CEO of our company, Adam Simpson, grew up in Los Angeles. He's in Cincinnati now, and he talked about how he would watch the Dodgers, I believe, Pat, on KCLA. I forget the call letters now of the Los Angeles station. I know I would watch games growing up. yes, there were some on cable, but there were some over the air.
Right.
So one of the solutions, Pat, would be, if possible, to have some games over the air. And considering that cable is a luxury now for a lot of people, that seems like a very interesting scenario that I know you and I and everybody who works with us were watching out for.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, Jason, that it could, everything old is new again. We could be reverting back to that model we saw in the early days of cable, where a handful of games are on cable and a handful of games are on broadcast TV, one of your stations. And I think you brought up Scripps Sports, and I think, whether it was planned, dumb luck, a little of both, they seem to be coming around at the exact right time with the Pac-12 network in the situation it's in, the Big 12 network in the situation it's in, the MLB contracts and NHL and NBA and the total uncertainty about these regional sports networks. ION is a place where some of that could go. Each one of the local television stations you mentioned, us and ABC 15 in Phoenix, KGUN 9 here in Tucson, we could be the disseminators of a handful of games a week of certain. It could be a couple Diamondback games. It could be a couple of Coyotes games. It could be a couple of Suns games. I don't know what the future will hold, but I know that it's an interesting time, and maybe this is starting up at the exact right time.
I don't think it was dumb luck, though. I think it was well planned.
No, I'm kind of kidding about that.
I think it was. Hey, if we bring back baseball over the air, Pat, we got to bring back the bullpen car.
Yeah, we got to bring back a lot of stuff. But I do think that the timing was fortuitous, and I don't know how much of it was, hey, a year ago they said, you know what, this might happen. I don't know that anybody knew that they were going to default on these loans, and suddenly it was going to be a bankruptcy or else for these 19 regional sports networks. But I think that they knew that the landscape was changing, and I think they also saw there is constantly new TV agreements coming up that you could at least bid for. And I think so. Kudos to our bosses for thinking of it. And let's sit back and see what happens.
Yeah, and certainly, we mentioned Diamondbacks in Major League Baseball, but there was a report. There were conflicting reports, right? One report said the Pac-12 was interested in some type of deal. Another report said that report was false. Back in the day, there was just television. Now we've got streaming and other situations too. So
yeah,
so
and it could be
a lot to unpack.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, it could be that the Pac-12 is on the verge of an all streaming platform. Who knows? I mean, somebody's going to have to be first one to do it, Jason, and I believe somebody will be, and then maybe they'll all follow. And that's not to say they'll never be broadcast, but streaming, we both know it's here. We do it all the time. You and I do it all the time. It's becoming just a second nature, just like turning on the TV.
As long as it's not pay-per-view.
But you're going to have to pay at some point. You don't want. I understand what you're saying. I don't want to pay $19.95 every time the Arizona men play basketball.
Right.
Right. But if I pay $19.95 and I get to watch the whole season, then that's what it's going to cost.
Okay, it's reasonable. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, people ask me, well, do I have this? Do I have HBO? Do I have a Netflix? Do I have 10 things add up? It's like my pockets aren't unlimited.
You see Wally Wildcat? You see Wally Wildcat here? I think
I didn't look at the comments here.
I think he's speaking right at you, Jason. Yeah.
All right, let's see. I would love to watch D-backs games without cable again. I have too many subscriptions. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
That's it.
That's right. Somebody was asking me if I saw the Chris Rock Netflix feature. I'm like, well, I can't have Netflix and HBO and ESPN Plus and Peacock, and it's like it's just too much. All right,
what else? Clearly don't have kids in their 20s, Jason, like I do, because I have to buy all those subscriptions so that they can freeload off me. So I have all those.
All right, well let's hope Netflix doesn't listen to this podcast here.
No, I pay the family.
That's what they're trying to do.
I pay the family rate because one of them's here in Tucson, but the other one's up in the Midwest, so he's got a different IP address, so it has to be the family plan.
All right. So anyway, that was a good topic. I'm glad we brought on Dan Caesar. And just real fast, a minute or two, we'll circle back with where we started because we wanted to get the guest in. Today, Pat, the Pac-12 awards were announced for men's basketball.
Yeah.
Kind of went as what I thought. I didn't think Tubelis was going to be named Player of the Year. He and Umar Ballo are, I believe, on the first team. Ballo named Most Improved Player. I think that's something that really speaks to Tommy Lloyd. 2 years in a row, you've got the Most Improved Player on the team. And both times it wasn't the freshman to sophomore year, which is odd because that's usually when a player has his or her most improvement as freshman to sophomore. He got the Most Improved Player sophomore to junior year, 2 straight years. I thought that speaks to Tommy Lloyd.
And it was the big man.
No honorable mention for Kirk Kriisa, but yes for Courtney Ramey. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. There's just not enough room, let's put it that way, in a lot of cases. And you can't expect Arizona and UCLA to just dominate every single spot on first team, second team. So, somebody's going to be left out. Courtney Ramey gets an honorable mention. I kind of thought, because Kirk Kriisa now 2 years in a row has led the league in assists, that's quite an honor. But maybe he's just not the scorer that you'd like to see. Ramey certainly scored in bunches, and I think that's a terrific thing to see. I think that give Azuolas Tubelis another 2 years. He'll be a 6-year senior, like we saw from Jaime Jaquez, and he'll win the conference player of the year award too.
Now you think Tubelis is coming back next year?
I'm half kidding. I'm kidding, Jason.
Gotcha.
Jaime Jaquez won the award because he's been there forever.
That's right. It does feel like he and Tiger have been there forever.
Think about it. Just step back a second and think who really deserved that award. Because how many times as a player in the Pac-12 led the conference in scoring and rebounding the same year?
Yeah, it's been about 15 years since happened.
So just on that stat alone, and it was on the second best team in the conference, so you can't go, well, it's got to be the best player on the best team. Okay, well, then you're going to be at Jaime Jaquez. But if it's one of the best teams and the best player, to me, he deserved it. But I know why Jaime Jaquez won it. Jaime Jaquez is a terrific player. Intensity, he's got all the intangibles, but he's a great college player. I'm not sure he'll translate to the NBA. That's just my opinion. But I understand why he won it. I just think that Azuolas Tubelis was deserving as well.
Pat, I think Tommy Lloyd's got a good problem here going into the tournament. Bam Bam Boswell is one of the 2 or 3 best players on the team. Now, the answer is this. You're not going to upset the apple cart, and you're not going to not start Henderson and Ramey. But you're going to see Boswell and Larson, if he's playing well, him too, will be on the court come crunch time, and not Ramey and Henderson, even though Ramey and Henderson are starting. Because Boswell just keeps getting better and better.
He was so impressive in those 2 LA games, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It was like
he could play in the NBA right now. By the way, Pat, do you know how old he is? Do you know how old he is?
No, how old is he, Jason?
I'm going to mention this in the stand up for our sports special. Every single time they mention him, they mention he's 17 years old. What's going to happen when he turns 18? They're going to have to come up with new material.
The over under is 5 times a game, I think, and in the first minute he's on the court, that's the other over under. 1 minute is when he's on the court, whether or not they mention he's 17 years old.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think he suddenly has become one of their best players.
That's right.
And he's better than any of the other guards in my book. But then again, he's still a 17-year-old freshman who, if he were to start and play, and he won't, but if he were to start and play all those minutes, maybe he gets a little bit more exposed. I don't know. But that's what maturity does. And by the time he's 18 next year, this guy's going to be all conference. You watch.
I agree. All right. On that note, everybody enjoyed March Madness in the Pac-12 tournament. And we'll see you right back here next week. We could be on the road, could not be on the road.
Maybe. Could we be driving across Texas? No, it'd be California, maybe, like we did last year. We drove across Texas.
We'll have to see.
That was second round.
Thanks to our guest, Dan Caesar from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And for Pat Paris, I'm Jason Barr. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening to the Huddle live or on record. We'll see you right back here next Tuesday. Have a good one, everybody.